Hello everybody, Blue Dooley, and we are on the Grand Hauler once again. Got almost all the lights hooked up correctly and working. My reverse light isn't cooperating, so I'm not sure if the LED might be bad or if I didn't get one of the connections soldered correctly. But got most of the rest of the parts I needed in. I still need to do some 3D printing for my drive shaft, which I'll grab that and show you kind of what's going on with that here in a little bit. So we got the truck out on the workbench because I'm going to redo this. I'm going to cut these welds off and then grind these down so they'll fit on the inside of the frame rails. Then I will bolt them into the frame rails, re-tack it, and then re-weld it up so it'll be where I wanted it in the first place. My steering axles both came in. These are a generic Amazon. They were like 11 or 17 bucks a piece. They're actually a really nice axle and have a fairly substantial steering rod on them. I still don't have U-bolts or square hardware to bolt them to those links yet, but since the mud flap goes right there, that's pretty much right where they need to be. And really happy with that. So I don't have the fuel tanks mounted, as took this whole battery thing off just so I could mess with getting the body on and off a little easier while messing with lights. So let me grab my drive shaft stuff and we'll go over that, and then we will work on getting that re-welded up. But what I have for my intermediate drive shaft setup I'm going to do is I have a very short RC four-wheel drive shaft, and then I have a 5mm stainless steel rod that'll come back to the other RC four-wheel drive scale drive shaft, and then a couple of bearings. This is, I forget how long it is, but it's just a stock piece you can get off of Amazon. Just look up 5mm stainless steel rod. So I will need to print carrier bearing, or the bearing holders, 3D print them, because none of the stock cross members are anywhere close to where the bearings go. I suppose I could actually use this one and this one, but I'd like to have the bearings a little closer to the U-joints, if at all possible. So I'll need to cut this down to length, and then, like I said, 3D print some bearing holders, and then this cross member I'm using to hold the lift axle brackets in, I'm gonna have to notch this side so my wiring, guess we'll move the drive shaft first, so the wiring will tuck up in the frame rail real nice and neat. And then for my chassis lights, I got JST plugs, and to make sure after the bumper's printed and the LEDs are in the bumper, when I unhook them, I put a different plug on the right and left turn signal, and then the reverse light is a different color. So I'll remember, be easier to plug and unplug it if I need to, but I'm not thinking I'm going to have to do that too often. So I'll put you down here. And then, like I said, this steering axle is going to just sit right here and come up just like that and go down. I'm going to use, if I can find some like 1/24 scale shocks to keep these centered, which is actually how the real ones operate. Is it's got the tie rod running between both ends, and then a shock and a spring coilover shock on each side that they work together to keep them centered, and then when you turn, it recenters just from the weight. So that's going to work pretty much like it does on a real truck. The only difference is it won't have an airbag pushing against a bracket to lift the axle, it'll just have the servo pick up the axle. But I got the compressor aired up because I'm going to use my air saw to get a nice neat cut on those. And then, like I said, I'll grind these out so they'll sit inside the frame rails correctly. And I'll get that done and then we'll come back. Because grinding and cutting just makes noise and there's nothing interesting about it. To finish welded up, what I did was bolt these ends into the chassis and then just put my ground clamp on the center piece, got it all lined up nice and neat, tacked both ends. Once I was happy with where it's at, I put a bead on the top on each side just to make sure it'd hold everything square. Then I took it off the truck, finish welded it in the vise. It is going to be a snug fit in between the servos, that square stock and the frame. So I'll have to use a cap head screw and put the screw head in up against the servo and then put the nut on the outside, and then the other one will be able to go in regularly. I still need to drill the holes for the repositioned servos, and I just noticed on this axle these holes are threaded, the center holes are threaded, and the back side's threaded. The stock to me is just have the one side threaded for the shock hangers. So you could actually, I got one laying around here. If you had a link, you could just thread the link straight into the axle like that, which is what RC Everyday does for his hot rod builds, because he uses the semi-axles for all his rat rods. So these little $11 or $17 Amazon units are actually kind of a lot more versatile than the stock Tamiya units. And like I said, they have a little less, they still have slop in them, but not quite as much as those stock ones. I got my hat on backwards because I use a hat on when I weld. But those are ugly welds. I'm going to get them cleaned up. It's getting kind of late, so I think I'll clean those up off camera. Again, it's just grinding welds smooth. It's not riveting entertainment. And that's the difference between a good welder and a bad welder. A good welder, you wouldn't have to clean up your welds. Bad welder, paint, grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't. The thing I'm really trying to do with this particular semi-truck build is show that you don't have to get perfection to enjoy the hobby and have fun. That's kind of what I'm shooting for in most of my videos. I want to show you that with the right tools, some help with a friend, maybe some YouTube tutorials, you can do it. It might take you 2 hours longer, or a day, or weeks, but you can do it. The soldering, my wiring job, well, I'll show you that. Not perfect, it works. Except for one light. There's a lot of lights on that truck, so one not working, I'm okay with. So here's my messy wiring. Have it mostly tied up. I need to finish tying up the wires here at the front of the body. I also need to get that grill off so I can repaint it. But turn signals and headlights are wired in. And then I use some small JST connectors for the reverse light and the chassis mounted turn signals and brake lights. 2 are male and 1 is female. The reverse light and 1 plug into the male, and then the other turn signal plugs into the female. That way, if I need to take the body off and put it back on, I can figure out which one's which pretty easily. Comes down into the ribbon cable, and it's a mess. I'm not even going to pretend that it's not. It's a mess. I'm not really great at wiring. It's kind of one of those things you need a lot of patience for, and I don't have a ton of patience. So we're going to set the body on the chassis and plug the ribbon cable into the buyer unit, and we'll test out all the lights now that we can plug them all in. Got all of the lights wired up. The reverse light isn't working right now, but turn signals, park lights, light bar, all of that stuff is good to go. We do have the brake lights that are always on when the truck's stationary, and then when you start going, they turn up. So the tail lights, besides doing brake, also do turn signals on the rear, which is really nice. That combined light function on the SFR and the beer other light kit, super nice. We'll go ahead and turn the headlights off, park lights off, and then we still have turn signals. So there's where that light kit's at. I still need to work on the sound a little bit. We got her fully lit up. I don't have a function to turn on the hazards yet at the moment. Kind of running out of channels on that 10-channel radio. So it's going to look pretty good all lit up. And while my wiring harness is kind of ugly, the lights function except for that reverse light, and that might be the light bulb might be burnt out. And I have decided I'm going to use the SFR1 to control the lift axles on the truck and the trailer. That way I can tie the lifting of the axle in with the sound kit, so when the axle either goes up or down, you'll hear the airbags deflating. So that'll be kind of cool. Other than that, we do got the we do still need to get out the FMS Chevy and do some crawling with it. I do like the fit. This is a little small, but I noticed on the F-150 at work next to the T880 that the fender, top of the fender, is almost even with the hood of that F-150, although it's a 2014. So it's a little short this way, but I still think it's going to look good with the trucks while they're all out and about. That's going to do it for this video. As always, click like and subscribe so you can see more of this kind of stuff from me, and we'll catch you in the next video.